Alrighty. Testing. Can you guys hear me? Yes, no. Can I get confirmation from chat if you guys can hear me? Maybe, perhaps, yes. I can't hear myself. All right, loud and clear. Hello, everybody. How are all of you today? Welcome. Good morning, or I guess it's still morning. How is everybody? Thanks, guys, for joining us. Welcome to the scholarship workshop. We're about to get started. We just wanted to give everybody some time to come in. And now that I think everybody has had some time to settle in, we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. Hello, I'm Rachel. I will kind of be moderating mostly today. I will not be the ones providing you this content, but allow me to introduce Bonfire if you guys didn't know. We are a nonprofit organization and we do a lot of these types of events. So if you're interested in it, go follow us on Instagram and, subscribe on YouTube or, do all the fun stuff. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but let's kind of get started and introduce to you our speakers for the day. So I'll bring them in one by one. We'll start with Vicky. Hello, Vicky. And
Hello,
then
everyone.
we got Brian.
Hello.
And Tanya.
Hi. Morning.
Hello. So I guess without further ado, I'll turn it over to all three of you. Have fun. Good luck. I'll see you guys later.
All right. Thanks, Rachel. Hi. Good morning, everyone. Hope you have your breakfast. Yeah, that's most important. And really thank you all for spending your early morning being here. We are really excited. All three of us are really excited to share our experience. And I should get started. So today's kind of a webinar it's on scholarship, and all three of us, we have different I guess scholarship experiences that we will share with you. And here it says great is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. So definitely agree with that. And having scholarships can really benefit you in so many ways, but there are also, of course, certain things that you should also take note of, because not everything comes free, right? Yeah. So should we move to the next slide? Yeah. Okay. So before we start, I'm just gonna do a very brief and quick introduction about myself. So I'm Tanya. I'm currently a sports dietitian. Yeah, I work with athletes on their nutrition. So I've received scholarship since when I was in secondary school. So I studied in Chempaka International School. Not sure if many of you know this international school, but I studied in Sri Chempaka under the Chempaka Sports Scholarship. So it's a private school, and I was given the scholarship because of my sports involvement and sports achievement. And then shortly after, I also received a JPA scholarship to further my study, to study in college with a bachelor's degree in dietetics and nutritional science at Iowa State in the US. And I worked for a little bit before getting my master's degree in Taiwan with the Ministry of Education Taiwan Scholarship. And I studied in University of Taipei. And I graduated last year. So yeah, it's been a great experience. And I'll pass on the floor to Vicky to introduce herself.
Thanks, Tanya. My name is Vicky. So currently, I'm a full-time senior sustainability specialist, and also a visitor at the Australian National University. So I also work in the past 3 years or 4 years. I have been a postdoctoral researcher or a research fellow attached to one of the training center at the Australian National University. So a little bit about my education background. So I am originally from Malaysia. So I've done my secondary school at MK Kampung Bukit Nanas. So I proceeded to a diploma course in majoring in electronic engineering at University of Technology Malaysia in the KL campus. So this is about like a 3 years degree. And then I managed to transfer credit to actually complete my Bachelor's of Engineering at the Australian National University for just in 2.5 years, inclusive of honors. And straight up after my degree, I was offered a, a scholarship to do my PhD as well. So it wasn't planned, but it was an opportunity that I grabbed. And then I proceeded to do my PhD directly. So I did not have a specific work experience during that time and directly translated to doing my my PhD degree at ANU as well. I think like during that time, I have a 6 month, 3 to 4 months of internship experience at National Instruments in Penang Island, just right to complete my honors degree. That is a compulsory. So I think that's all about me. I'll pass on to Brian.
Right, thanks, Vicky. So just going to go quickly about my introduction, but I think the point that we want to highlight here is that if you would want to look at the figures, the money figures is very important in a sense of scholarships point of view, not from the point that we try to boast ourselves. But if you can see the numbers here, it actually goes more money as you go higher in your education. So it's very important to understand that as we proceed from here. So as I started off from SPM, like most of you are, I did not have scholarship in that sense. So it's father and mother scholarship, which most of you know. But you probably don't actually realize that there's some form of money involved, even doing an SPM. But as you go on, what you're trying to do now is when you move into, say, I did a diploma in electrical electronics in NT Subang, then the course itself will cost you another $40,000 ringgit Malaysia. So, and then you got to think about your living expenses. So things like that has to be in your mind as we go on in this workshop. Then I move on to do my Bachelor's of Engineering in Canberra, Sydney, under Yayasan Sam Davi Scholarship. And you can roughly gauge like within 2 years of me completing that scholarship, it costs ringgit Malaysia of approximately 300,000 ringgit Malaysia. And then I went back to Malaysia. I worked with Sam Dabi for about 6 years in the R&D as a scientist. And then I come back now in Sydney. So I'm based at Sydney now doing my PhD in pathology. So that scholarship is under Scientia. So it's a separate scholarship under the university itself. And so when you move into postgraduate, you got to think about the money that you got to use for your tuition fees and the money for your living expenses, which in total, that will probably cost you about 1.2 million ringgit. And then you got to think about the amount of money you got to do for your research, which is a separate money altogether. And that's like 3 million ringgit at least, you know. So all these things is going to play around, and you think about it as we go, and you gotta have more questions and write it down now before later, so that you can ask a little more questions when we open up the forum. All right, so next slide. So the structure of today's workshop is that I will talk a little bit more of things of what you need to know before you prepare for application, and then Vicky will go through the details of things that you should do and what you should do in your application and prepare it. And then Tanya will go through the details of how should you look out for scholarships and additional stuff that you should probably be aware as you apply for the scholarship. So we are entering into a new norm, but before that, I probably just remembered that I had a recent chat with Vicky regarding about accreditation of the degree. I'll probably just have to mention this later, but I'll just remember it. But yeah, we're just doing this new norm now that we're entering a new norm. So all of us are no surprise throughout the entire world, we come into this situation. So the way this scholarship has been structured is that it's been structured in such a way it was before lockdown. So you got to keep in mind that a lot of things has changed along the way, but the underlying fundamentals of the things that you need to prepare for your scholarship remains the same. But what I want to highlight a few key points. Can you just click out the points? Back. Yeah. So these are a few things that you need to keep in mind. It's very important throughout the process. The first one is your vaccinations. Um, it's a lot of situation going around now, like what kind of vaccines you should take, all this kind of stuff. This one I'll leave it to the world leaders to handle it, but it's important for you to keep in mind, because for the recent conversation I was listening to, the parliament, for example, there's one case where someone was taking a Sinovac vaccine and they wanted to go to Australia to study, but Australia doesn't accept Sinovac to come in at border. So then you got to work things out, that whether your vaccines that you've taken at some point, I think most of you, if you're still below a certain age, you probably haven't gotten your vaccine. But this is something very important to keep in mind, because I think in Malaysia, you probably could be able to ask and inquire if you can actually change vaccines. But don't quote me, you got to check with your leaders in Malaysia. But it's something to keep in mind. If you're going to overseas, what kind of vaccines is going to be eligible for you, or maybe it will change at some point, I don't know, but it's good to keep in mind. The next point is number of scholarships is going to affect during this period of time, which no doubt economy has changed. So you probably will have a lower number of scholarships, which what we think, but we may not know until you do your real homework. But most likely the number of scholarships will reduce. The deadlines as well will change. It's no longer the days where you can predict the deadlines and think it's going to be this month and the following year it's going to be the same month. Things is going to change. Location is something you got to be aware. If you're in Malaysia and you're going to apply scholarships, you got to think that most of the scholarships going to offer you, is it going to be onshore, offshore? What it means is that, is it going to be just within Malaysia? Say you're going to apply to US, the scholarship, is it within just US and it's not going to open to Malaysians? Things like that you got to be aware, because it's going to affect as well. Most scholarships they're going to give you just onshore. So if Australia is going to give you scholarship, most likely the scholarship will be just within Australia. If you are in Australia, then you have an advantage. So think of it. Screening process is going to be affected, and you probably know physical meeting is going to be a problem. So I personally seen this, especially for Yayasan Saim Dabi and Yayasan Kazana. They have moved the interview sessions to virtual. So these things will change along the way. So keep in mind on all this stuff, and probably prepare your questions if you have any at the end of this presentation. All right, next. So we kind of just like about to start the whole workshop, but the whole general perception is that we probably have this misconception that scholarship is only available for the smarties. That's not exactly true. While most scholarships, they look a lot of different things, but we'll just look at what are things that they look at. So these are the list of things that scholarships in general will look at. So first point is exam results. No doubt you have to do a certain results to achieve a certain things, but it's not necessarily true that you have to score all A's or all full beautiful colorful results. It sometimes you probably can get, if you have lesser A's, then you probably will be able to apply. The least I've seen, say for example, there's one case, there are people who doesn't have A's at all who also gotten it. People who have gotten just 5 A's as well have gotten it. So these are the things that not necessarily true that most A's means gives you better scholarship or more scholarship opportunity. But language tests is another thing you need to keep in mind. They probably test you in certain angles, especially in English. If you're going to English spoken country, or if you're going to Japan, you got to prepare to speak Japanese, for example. Curricular activities is no doubt, but it's probably going to change a bit now. I don't know how you're going to conduct your extracurricular. There are one case I know from my mentee from Bonfires that he's conducting his course from online, so which I assume that you guys are doing that as well. So things like that, you got to be prepared to list it down in your achievements. Humanitarian work, leadership, soft skills. So I'll just quickly go through these, please, because it's going to take a lot of time and details. and you prepare your questions, and we will answer you specifically on what do you want to know. And dreams and professional involvement, all these things are typical stuff that we'll go through. The next one is that what kind of organizations will give you scholarships. So I kind of a little bit highlighted this a little bit just now, that local and international, there are scholarships here and there. Government, you probably know of is JPAs, the common ones. Private higher education institutions from universities itself, corporations, as I mentioned just now, be it like Saindabi, Yayasan Khazanah from the Ministry of Finance. You have Bank Negara, you have probably Astro, all these big corporations are probably going to offer you, but there's going to be affected. But as far as I know, the last I checked, for example, in Saindabi, they still offer to go US and UK. You want to check on these for our latest information in the website. Non-profit foundation societies are NGOs that you can look out for. Within the same point, I also want to highlight on philanthropies as well. You want to be aware that some scholarships are also offered by people who are very rich at the same time, who wants to offer to help you to go to do your undergraduate or your postgraduate. Media companies, things like companies like News Straits Times that I've gotten it. You can look at Star, you can look at Nanyang Xiangpao, all these kind of media stuff may or may not offer it now. So you've got to look at that. Sports organizations, you can look at that as well. I do know, I think in the past, there's a scholarship specifically from Lee Chong-wei, but if Lee Chong-wei is going to watch this at some point, don't quote me, but you probably have to look it out. What is the latest situation now, and look for that. All right. So next. So before you apply, you got to roughly know what your personal goals are. This is very, very, very important, because you not just go and apply the money, look up for the money and then say, okay, I want to do something. It doesn't work that way. You already need to know what you want to do, and then you apply for the scholarships. That's the most general scholarship. I think if you do for JP, it's a separate process. But in general, what you got to know is that you got to need to know what you want, and then you specifically apply for that. So ambitions is one thing. What do you want to be for money? For what reasons? You got to know, is it from parents' dreams or is it role model? This is stuff you need to know. Your final degree, means that at what is your final degree that you want to achieve? Is it up to a PhD, up to Doctor of Medicine, up to Doctor of Science, Doctor of Jury, or whatever? And then you go in to do your professional career. This is important because it will bring you through the entire career, your education process, and it will help you to determine what kind of scholarships that help you to push you through. And I kind of did talk about accreditation, and that is very important. So at this point, it's not in the slide, you probably want to write it down, is that you got to make sure that the degree that you're taking is accredited by your local organization. So for in Malaysia, it is from MQA. This is important because if you do a degree and go for it, and then it's not accredited, you can still get graduated from the university, but you may have a problem. Let's say you go to overseas or other countries because it's not recognized, or it's not recognized by other companies or professional board if you're doing a professional degree. So keep in mind on that. If you're in Australia, for example, it's from ACQ, AQA or something like that, but it's basically look for a local organization for whichever country that you go, make sure it's accredited. Another point I want to put up is that make sure that it's worthwhile looking at whether the accreditation is going to be expired, because you may get accredited at a point of you enroll into the program, but along the way, maybe the expiry date is in between. You might want to just look up on a case like Lim Kok Wing. I think recent news in Malaysia that there's one degree that is not accredited, but I don't know what's the story after that. So you want to look at that on the details. And next point is your final destination, which is very similar to your degree. You know your final degree, you got to know your final destination, where you want to go. So I think next slide. So the scholarship program workshop here is not designed to kind of spoon feed you and tell you which scholarship to apply and things like that, because there are so many countries across the world, 195, not 500 countries, if you know what I mean. But there's close to 24,000 universities in the world. So we can't just help you through one by one and tell you these are universities you need to go and do. You really need to find out which universities you want. But in my experience, I would think that The safest is that, of course, most scholarships will probably ask you at least within the top 100 in the ranking in the world, but it may differ depending on where and all that kind of stuff, and how big is your ambition and things like that. So, but all these pointers that you look at the bottom, like lifestyle, living costs, facilities, lecturers, people, culture, and so on and so forth, these are the points that you want to keep in mind, because it's going to determine which country and which universities you want to take up. That's going to affect your decision to apply for your scholarship. All right, next. So in this slide, it talks about timeline, which is also very important. You want to make sure, as I mentioned, your final degree, your final destination makes sense, and you don't want to apply scholarship that only help you to sustain, maybe to do halfway of your degree. And what do you do when the remaining years of your degree, or then you finish your degree, but you actually aim to do your PhD, and then you don't have funds, and you got to make sure you plan that right. So approximately these are a number of years, but you got to get that feeling that like you do pre is about 1 to 2 years. You do your bachelor degrees can be 3 to 4 years, depending if it's honors, not honors, or there's any other sorts of stuff that you need to do. Master's degrees normally 1 to 2 years, PhD about 2 to 5 years. And then some people will go like, oh, I want to do a second PhD, I want to do 3 PhDs. Like in the place I work, the one of the person I know, he has 2 bachelor degrees and 3 PhDs, and that's the entire life doing the entire study. But these are the things you gotta know, like what you're gonna do with it, like how many you want and how's the flow you want. And internship is gonna affect as well. Like the scholarship I have, there's internship, so it's included in the package, so that will also fall in part of a scholarship package. And then you got to look at a professional recognition, which is an entirely different topic, which is an entirely different workshop. We can talk about it in a separate workshop at some point in time. I think we talked about before earlier. But yeah, these are things you got to keep in mind. So from here onwards, I'll pass on to Vicky. Vicky will talk to you about the details of the application. Over to you, Vicky.
Thanks, Ryan. So I'm going to be talking about the process of the application for PhD not PhD scholarship, but scholarships in general, but they do apply to different levels. So the first and foremost, always do your homework. So there's, as Brian has emphasized multiple times, like the scholarships are available in and out of Malaysia. It's not just within Malaysia. There's also scholarships that are offered by other universities, and also sometimes, depending on the field, companies, international organizations. And it's good to have yourself about a year to prepare so that you have a better chance. So when we are talking about that, it's like to sort of do some survey and understand, like based on your dream, what you aspire and what kind of field you want to study, and target those areas, like what kind of scholarship is available, what can I apply for, and do I want to be studying locally in Malaysia or overseas? And your search will need to expand based on your target area. So there's also a note here that you need to sort of understand that if you are planning to do postgraduate, particularly a master's, there's 2 streams. One is like master's by coursework. There's also master's by research. So master by coursework has very, very limited scholarships normally compared to research, because master's by research is always attached to a bigger research grant, for instance. So these are the things that you should be mindful if you plan ahead, thinking that I do want to do a master's, and if you want to get a scholarship, the route that you may possibly have to consider is likely to be for research based. And next, knowing a timeline. So Brian has actually mentioned about the timeline quite specifically. I won't go into detail into that part, but what is very important in this particular one in terms of application is when is the application of the scholarships, what are their deadlines and when their intakes are. So local scholarships, or in Malaysia, it would be very different from a scholarship that is provided, take for instance, in countries like in the US or Australia, for instance, because the terms and semesters are quite different. And normally the way they offer the scholarship and their deadlines are really in accordance to the deadlines of the study time or study period or the semester time in the different universities. For companies, they try to accommodate, but sometimes they give you a period of a few months time because they know that they provide application or scholarship application for different countries, for instance. So you will have to make sure that you can achieve those deadlines and ensuring that you have enough funding. I suppose, like, is it going to be able to cover you as well? That's something that Brian has mentioned. And then next is the requirement. So know what you're required for each scholarship. This is utterly important. And always be one step ahead, plan ahead. If you are planning to apply for a scholarship, always have all these documents in hand. So you never know, there will be a scholarship that you didn't know of, was recommended by a friend or somewhere you search, and you were very fast approaching the deadline. It can be in 5 days, for instance. It's very, very handy to have all these documents in hand. So from my experience, it can be done even towards your, I suppose, towards your studies, like when you are about to finish SPM. So in my school, in my previous school, what they have done is they have this period of 3 or 4 months, or probably 2 months or 3 months before SPM is finished. They would actually ask every student to provide 10 copies of each of your certifications, your copies, or your academic achievements, as well as other achievements that you would like to showcase for any kind of applications. And they will actually certify 10 copies of each. So this is called plan ahead. So you have the certified copies in hand because all application normally need something that you want to certify so that you can submit it straight away. It will take a lot of time. If only you knew that you need a certain document and you need to done it within 4 days time, for instance, that's very stressful for you, and you are not putting yourself at the very best for your application. It's good to be prepared and make sure that all these documents that are easy can be done prior and focus on maybe things that you need to write. Take, for instance, why are you suitable for, why do you think you're the best candidate for us to provide this scholarship, and you need to write a one-page document. Focus on those things. Things that can be done should be done earlier. So it really depends also in what requirements will take you longer to prepare. And it's good to understand as well what kind of scholarship you apply for, because certain things would require you to get admissions to certain universities. Like if you are going to apply for overseas scholarship, they would definitely, or Australia, for instance, a very typical example, they would always ask for admissions to universities. Are you being offered yet? And in order for you to get that, you need to do else, for instance, to get an offer from or application to a university admissions. They are totally separate. And last but not least is data collection. It's always important to have preparation done on your CV, for instance, because that is one document that really represents yourself. Who are you? How are you differing from other candidates? And by putting a lot of effort in understanding how to sort of structure your CV and resume to best present yourself and your skills, that would put you up front. So it's really important that you start scanning and organizing all your certificates, understanding what is important, what you want to showcase, what represents you the most, and what do you see yourself as being something like, I'm expert in this area. I think I excel in this area. So put that up front so that they can sort of have some sort of identity linked to you, and it's also memorable as well. It also gives a sense of organized, and it's always something that scholar providers always look into in a scholar to provide a scholarship to any students. So very, very important. Whatever application steps here, always start ahead, start early, because it's very important to be prepared rather than rushing things through, because you may not think it matters, but ultimately this can be seen through your application. Like this particular scholar or applicant is actually rushing through all the information because it doesn't match up, it sort of mismatch, and the documents are incomplete. Always put yourself at the very best position so that you can make sure you fulfill all the requirements, all the documents, everything are aligned accordingly to ease them as the assessor to sort of understand that you tick all the box. And most importantly, give yourself the time to sort of put out a best representation of your skill and expertise. Next. So there are a few things about scholarship terms and requirement that you need to consider when you apply for scholarship. So maintenance and criteria, this is something that for university scholarship that is offered by university, they tend to have this. You need to maintain certain academic results so that you can continuously receive your scholarship. So this is something that you need to consider. It's not a long-term scholarship for 3 years, but it is a semester basis and it's based on your performance. So in this kind of situation, you need to consider that I need to put 100% into certain things like academic results so that you can maintain it. And also after graduation, so there are a lot of scholarships offered by companies like Gamuda and so forth, or some Dhabi. They tend to have a bonding period. Are you comfortable with the bonding period? Do you want to be bonded to a company so that you have a job security? All these things needs to be considered. Or the bonding of the scholarship, does it deter you from doing your postdoctoral studies? That is also another thing to consider. And what are the penalties if you break those rules? If you do think that you may potentially break some of the rules, are you going to be, can you afford those penalties? That's also another thing that you need to consider in terms of scholarship terms and requirement. So I think next I'll pass to Tanya.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. Those are really, really, really great information, especially the preparation part for the application. Yeah, so here I would like to just share a few tips, and to echo what Vicky has mentioned, preparation is so important. And I strongly believe that, in order to achieve anything that you want to achieve, to be successful, right, you really need to have preparation. And then, of course, the opportunity. Here, opportunity is always there, but if you're not prepared, if you don't have your CV ready, if you don't have, whatever that is required by the application ready by the deadline, then there goes the opportunity, right? So first thing first, for most of the scholarships, they require you to write a personal statement or an essay. So that's something that that you have to write already. So when you do that, always write in your own way, be yourself. Don't try to be someone that you hope to be, but you write it in your essay as if you are already that way. But and also speak your own style. So everyone has their own writing style. Of course, I mean, there's a lot of examples of essays out there that you can refer to, but never plagiarize, because usually after the first round of selection, there's always an interview, and the interviewer will know if you actually, if your language is actually matching the quality of the language that you speak actually matches how you write, right? So the second thing would be getting organized, be organized. So for those who hasn't started, I would suggest that you start record keeping. So meaning get a folder, either an online drive or cloud, or even a physical folder, to keep all your personal achievements and items organized, like your certificates. Take pictures as much as you can for any experience that you think is valuable. Even though sometimes maybe you think it's not valuable, it's worth taking and keep them. And yeah, so these are all the things that are important. Like, for example, listing down your achievements. That could be part of your preparation plan for your CV as well. And for all the certificates, scan or copy them, save a copy, so you never know when you need it. Okay. And once you get all that, and of course, writing your essays, proofread all your documents, share with your parents, your teachers, your counselor, even your friends or your peers, just so that they can, read through and get a second opinion about it. And ranking them in order of importance. So if you have a lot of certificates, or if you have a lot of achievements, try to rank them by level of importance or level of what do you call this, value. Yeah, because you don't want to show too many things which are not important or necessary. And of course, market your key highlights, which is echoing what I mentioned earlier. So if you have if you're someone who has so many achievements, right, and you have like 3 or 4 pages of achievements, it can be very overwhelming and difficult when you want to if you're only required to write just maybe 1 page of your personal essay or even a statement. So by doing that periodically instead of doing it all at once, I think that can really help. And also, of course, focus on what you are really, really, really proud of or important. And this part, it is important to get a second opinion as well. Maybe you think it's important, but it may not be important for the interviewer. Yeah, or other people may not see it that way. So get your teachers, get someone who has experience in it to actually share that. And the other thing is, similarly, when you do your preparation, when you do your research, always list down. This is the get organized part to add up. Always list down the types of scholarship that you're going to search on, the deadline, timeline, the requirements, so that you kind of know already what you need to prepare. And this, you don't even have to know for the scholarship for next year, because most likely they won't post it yet, but you can already know from the previous years what they are looking for and start preparing from now, from today onwards. Yeah. All right, let me go next. So just going to share some resources, and these are no-brainer actually. So whatever resources on the scholarships, types of scholarship, this, just Google has everything and anything. It's one of the best search engine to find all the information that you need, but you need to key in the important keywords. For example, you want to look for scholarship, right? You have to put in the scholarship, or maybe the country or the university or the degree, or even the forum to find out. There are some forums that chat about the scholarship itself or tips on how to help you. The other thing is talk to your counselors. They are the best resource that you can have. They are very experienced in terms of, of course, there may be teachers who are not too sure, but they are also one of the best resource for you to help you with your application. They can help you from, how to start, where to find out what you need. And you most likely need a recommendation letter from them. So do talk to them, be nice to them also. And the other resource is the ex-scholars, so like us, right? So for those who have experience going through applying all the scholarships and the process, do reach out to them. There's no harm. There's no, you cannot say you're shy or whatever. If you want something, you have to go out and get it. You have to reach out, right? The most that can happen to you is probably you don't get a reply, but that's about it, right? Sometimes you have to be a little bit thick skin on that. Don't feel shy, about it. Most of the scholars, they are very happy to share their experience and share their tips. Yeah. So please do that. Don't feel too shy. And also to share about the keywords, right? If you just Google like scholarship Malaysia 2001, you'll see so many websites. This is just one example. And like I said earlier, there will be so many listed down, right? You can just, what I do usually is I will just click on everything on different tab, right? And I have my Word document on, or Excel, that states the type of scholarship, deadline, requirements, whatever, bond that I have to serve, if I have any, what I need to do, right? So these are just some of the easy tips that you can do as well. And I think we can go next. Yeah, and also for my scholarship, I also shared some of the tips and tricks on how to get a scholarship, and some are really, really, really easy to find. People put out there, like what they have experienced from applying, the checklist, and then they also share on their blog, like the interview process, what happens before, what happens during the interview, what happens after as well. Yeah, so all of these actually require a lot of time for you to just scroll through, but I would tell you these are all really worth it. I think we can go next. And the other thing is, in order for you to write a very good personal statement or personal essay about yourself, you need to know about yourself, right? So to do that, and if you're not sure, like for example, when I was still 17, 16, some things I'm not sure, my interest or what I'm really good at, or my strength, you can even try this one, 16personalities.com or any other personality test to really kind of understand what kind of person you are. Or you can even ask your teachers or your parents, right? To know what kind of person you are, to be able to better write your personal essay. Yeah, so I think that's all we have, and I hope that whatever we share helps you to hunt for the scholarship. And always, just to summarize what we have today, when you get awarded, always know your legal obligations, right? These are scholarships, but they don't come free. Okay, so there may be a bond that you certain bond that you have to serve, or maybe you have to work in that country, or maybe you just have to pay a certain amount, right? So really you have to look at the criteria, always know your legal obligation. And then getting a scholarship is always just a beginning. Once you get it, you don't think, okay, I can just chill and relax and don't care about my results. No, usually scholarships, they always have a minimum requirement to maintain your CGPA, so you have to maintain your CGPA in order to make sure that you have enough funds for the next few years. Yeah, and now that you've learned all the tips and tricks, it's really time to give. So if you know about this webinar or workshop, do share them with your friends. Reach out to reach out to them. Maybe they are also looking for scholarships that you may not know. Yeah, and all of these experience really take a lot of time, right? But to me, and my dad used to tell me this, it may take a few days, a few hours, few weeks, maybe even. But don't feel that doing research on this scholarship is a waste of time, because your few hours, days, or weeks of research may get you as much as 40 to 400,000 to a million worth of scholarship of education for you to either study in Malaysia or overseas, right? That's really how much you're gonna save and spend. Maybe some of you may not know or realize this, but then after, when you graduate, or maybe even in college, then you start living on your own, and then you will know how much money that you need and cost, and how much hard-earned money that your parents have to pay for your education. So I hope that today's talk really can help you to do a little bit of thinking in terms of how to prepare and how to strategize on your scholarship applications. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, guys. That was great. Let me just click in and see. Just kidding. We can go back here first. All right. Just so you guys know, before we move on into kind of Q&A, we got so many good questions. I'm excited to kind of jump into some of these questions. If you guys need, Brian, Tanya, and Vicky's contact information are at the bottom of the screen right now. Both their emails and their LinkedIn. If you guys want to check them out, go ahead. Very friendly people, as you can tell already. So don't be scared. Go ahead and reach out to them. But now I think that's a really good cue to kind of jump into some of the questions. Irfa had asked a question, but I don't know if we received confirmation on what she meant. So maybe we can generalize a little bit. But essentially, the question is, do they offer full scholarships? And what I think she meant is, like, generally, are full scholarships a thing? Can you get a full scholarship? I think that's what she meant. Does anybody want to take this, or?
I think
Yeah,
any of us can take this. Yeah, go for it, Vicky.
Yeah, sure. So, in general, so a full scholarship, what I understood from that context is like living expenses as well as your tuition fee. There are scholarships that only offer tuition fees, and this is very typically provided by universities itself. Scholarships based on merit. There are also full scholarship that inclusive of living costs. That would be some sort of like normally provided by bigger organizations or government organizations. Take for instance JPA, Samdabi, Gamuda as well, from my understanding. So there are still quite a number out there, but you need to understand what is covered. Is it the tuition fee or the tuition fee plus living expenses? So the short answer to that is yes, there are full scholarship offered, but you need to understand what those scholarships, what are the terms and conditions in terms of what they're offering and how you want to maintain them. Because sometimes it is semester based. So I wouldn't consider that as a full scholarship because it would not last you for your whole study, like for 3 years, but it's semester based. It's merit based, and it will be reconsidered in a semester base. So those kind of scholarship, you need to be careful as well. You need to make sure that do you have plan B in case, just in case that you did not fulfill the criteria in the first semester and you do no longer valid to get for further scholarship, what you're gonna do. So these are the terms and conditions that you should sort of know upfront before you sign up for any scholarship.
Just to throw the details, which means that they cover full scholarship from a perspective of like SIMDAB, passport detail, passport fees, flight fees, visa fees, laptop fees. You can buy laptop, your clothing fees. They allow you to buy clothes, your accommodation, your food. Basically anything they need for you to survive, to wake up the next day, to read your books and continue and do your exam. So all that covered. So that's the full scholarship. Until the point you graduate, you even have internship. So that's the full package if you want to look at that perspective.
Cool. Thank you. Next question. This is a really good question too. So are there any cons to applying to scholarships with a bonding period?
I can share that a little bit. Yeah. So I think it depends on the bonding, right? So if let's say the bonding actually provides you with a job after 2 years or something, right? You know, for a period of time, and depends on how you see it. Like if you feel like, oh, okay, after I graduate, I don't have to, you know, search for a job. I don't have to be stressed about searching for a job. That's a good thing. But also if let's say after your scholarship period, you want to further to do your PhD, that might affect your own personal timeline as well. Yeah, but you can, I think Vicky or yeah, you can just add.
Yeah, I can add a bit more. I mean, bond is a huge thing and it has been following me until today. Um, so this is real experience I'm sharing. Of course, the pros is what already Tanya has highlighted, which I don't want to give you an idea that it's just cons, but the cons was more heavier than pros for me, in a sense that if you're already knowing what's your final degree, what's your final destination, then it's going to affect a bit. So for instance, my case, I wanted to do PhD. So when I finished my degree, before I graduated, I got a PhD offer and a scholarship, but from a different organization. So this was way back in 2012. And at the point of time, I accepted my offer to do my PhD and accepted my scholarship, which worth close to another R1,000,000. And I kind of already say that, okay, I want to do my PhD. But that's the legal obligations that you have, because in your legal obligations, you have two guarantors. So they ask you to put two guarantors, which you can find whoever you want to be, who have living, who earns a living, and then put it as guarantors, and you are tied with your guarantors. And when the company doesn't allow you to do that, then it's a problem. You can always appeal or you can always raise. There are people who have done that, but for my case, I couldn't. So I had to let go my offer and then go back to Malaysia, because if I don't do that, then it will be a problem. Then you can say maybe you break bond. Yeah, I thought about that. I even looked for legal details, seek for lawyer advice as well. But the situation is, if you're applying for a scholarship and you've taken close to about R500,000, then the question is, are you able to look for the amount of money to pay back? Because the legal process is, as soon as you initiate your interest to break your bond, they'll issue you a LOD. In short, it stands for letter of demand. And when they issue you a letter of demand, you have to pay all the full amount that you've taken within 30 days. And if you have the money, then you pay back and then you're out for it and move on next. But if you don't have, then that's going to affect. Another angle point of view is that I've decided to not take the offer, burn my scholarship and burn my PhD, and then go back. And then I did an engineering degree, but the offer given to me was not to do a job specifically in engineering to start off. So you can end up in other sorts of career, like as an auditor or working in other sorts of executive role. So you got to look at your clause very closely, whether the clause in your legal context allows you to do something more broadly or very specific. So if you're doing in like Petronas, I do know that if you gotta do in engineering, they will only offer you in engineering sector. If they can't, then within 6 months or so, then they will say they will release you to do they will release you from the bond and you can basically join other companies or do anything you want. But
Yep.
these are the things you got to think about it.
Yeah. Vicky, anything you want to add before we move on?
I think both Tanya and Brian covered it very well. So it's very similar as well. Like you do need to understand the bonding period and then what are the terms and condition and is it suitable for you? How your career plan actually would overlaps with this bonding period, the scholarships and the career that is attached to it. There are scholarships that would release you because they can't offer you job in certain areas. So those are really in the terms and conditions that you need to watch out. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So moving on to the next question, also from Mindy. Should we only record and keep achievements that are directly related and or relevant to our desired degree? It's a good question.
Yeah, very good question, Mindy. Yeah. No, Vicky, go ahead.
Good. So this is my perspective. So add on if Tanya and Brian has the other perspective, I always keep a record of all of my achievements. It's just about ranking them based on the scholarship you're applying, what's your strength and what you need to showcase. So I always have a clear folder that have every single of my achievements. It doesn't really matter. I even have like some sort of achievement in maybe like sports activities that has nothing to do with engineering degree, take for instance. But that shows that you are someone that is a bit of an all-rounder. You don't just do academically well, you are also an all-rounder. So I strongly suggest that you keep a record of all your achievements because that really, I think there's two things, right? This is really to help boost your confidence, one thing, to see what you have achieved, book a record, and also to sort of, if you could record it in a way that easier to reorganize it for the different scholarships, because different scholarships sometimes have different criteria, different weighting or assessment. So you need to sort of fulfill the needs, one thing, and also to present your achievements in a way that is very easy for them to assess. So it really based on what criteria they have set and how you reorganize it. But strongly suggest that you record and keep all your achievements in a way that is really easy for you to fit into any kind of scholarships that you would like to apply for.
Yeah, agree with Vicky. Just keep everything. Because like for example, the JPA scholarship, they don't just look at your academic achievements. They want to look at you as an all-rounder. So for example, they look at your academic achievement, that then you get a certain points. And then for leadership, you get a certain points. For the society that you have joined, even though it's like what Bulan Sabit Merah, it's fine. You get 1 point, it's fine. Even though you're not somebody, you're not the leader of the certain society, it's okay because you still get some points. For sports, different level of sports, you get a certain points. I mean, this is not something that to record, but like family income as well, they take into family income. And for certain scholarships, I know that they look at maybe your volunteer experience. That's another category of certificates that you might want to categorize, or even work experience or internship experience. They look at that as well. So yeah, it really keep every single thing. You never know when you need it. Yeah.
Cool. Brian, anything to add?
Nothing to add. I think they covered pretty much all of
Okay.
it. Yeah.
All right. All right. Next question is from Cassie. What are the essential qualities of a candidate who would succeed in securing a scholarship? Interesting question, Cassie.
I can start first and then Tanya and Brian can add on. So I personally think after experiencing like scholarships upon scholarships, there are a few things. Firstly, I think your skill sets that stands up with your personality actually plays a very important role. Sometimes you might have exactly like you all have really good academic records and results, but how they judge you is actually on the day how you interview and how you present yourself That's very important. How confident are you in speaking out in certain contexts, and how do you present yourself? All these are very, very, it may be nitty gritty and you don't think it's important, but how you present yourself and how confident you speak about yourself, do you portray yourself, and it I think that is one of the things that would help you to secure a scholarship. From my personal opinion, stands out and sort of have a bit of a leadership quality. That would also be another thing that I think is important. Tanya, Brian, to add in?
I would just say be prepared. I mean, when you're well prepared, it shows. It shows confidence. It shows that you want this instead of being unprepared. So it's, yeah, I think Vicky also covered most of it.
Yeah, I think whatever details that you need in terms of qualities, Tanya also have mentioned it very detailed in terms of the previous questions, what sort of details you need, and which relates to what kind of paper we need to prepare. But highlighting in the perspective of what qualities that you need to prepare, I guess is all about just hard work. The key point is that the takeaway here is that don't throw all your eggs into one basket. Spread it around and look for more other scholarships. So to give you a perspective, a number, when I was doing my SPM, I applied for at least 18 scholarships. So that is a number that you want to have a gauge that are you doing that much of many scholarships to look out for the numbers, because you're competing with a lot of people. And from Sime Darby's scholarship point of view, and put it a perspective as well, you're looking at 2,000 people that is going to apply for an application. But at the end of the day, there are only 20 people that are offered you to go to overseas. And you're looking at 20 over 2,000. That's a probability. So if you throw all your eggs into one basket, then it's going to be a problem, because you're just basically putting all your hope for that, and you might not be able to get it. So hard work is one thing, but from a perspective of qualities, once you go into the interview and all the details, when you're preparing it, you have your essay. My point is that when you key things like you said, I have a leadership skill. So make sure you elaborate your points based on your personal experience. You can't just say I have a leadership skill, I'm hardworking, I have a teamwork, blah, 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 and you don't have something to prove. So make sure you highlight that in the details of your essay if it's a paperwork. But when you go into the interview and you kind of claim that you have all that qualities, you will meet people that are going to interview you. For instance, most people, HR that I know of, they are actually psychologists, one of them, and they can interview and can gauge whether you're lying or not. So you got to make sure that you know your stuff. And then when another sorts of interview, let's say they look at your presentation skills. So then it's not just say I have a presentation skills, because they give you an environment that you actually have to present on the spot, and you only need to prepare like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so, and then you present on the spot. So don't try to highlight things that you know. Maybe this is what they want to know, but on the spot, when they give you an assessment of your presentation or an assessment of your teamwork, and then you are not showing it. So then that's not your strength. Make sure you highlight your strength and go for an interview.
Just a small little add-in to what Brian has mentioned. Always use the STAR approach, whether it's interview or
Yeah,
what
I was
you
going to say
right.
that.
Situation,
The star
task,
approach.
action, result. 4 points. Make sure you hit all points. Don't just say the results. I have leadership quality. It doesn't mean anything. They only know you in that 15 minutes. You need to make sure you present yourself well so that they can understand you. So yes, the 4 points, situation, star, just follow the star approach. That would really help you. Always think about star, star, star when you approach questions.
That was a good one. I also want to like just throw in here, guys. If you're listening to all this like super good answers, just remember that whatever you're learning to be applied for your quote unquote scholarship application and like the interviews for your scholarship, everything here also applies to like adult life. You know, like you're applying for your internship, you're applying for your job. All of it is the same. If you lie, the HR knows because they'll put you in a situation where they're going to test it and then they'll figure it out. Um, the interview and the star methodology also applicable for job interviews and everything else. So like just remember that like everything that you're learning here is useful outside of just applying for scholarships as well. Before we continue, because we have some really good questions still, I know that we are kind of 1 hour in. We're going to continue answering all the questions, but I just want to close it out in case anybody wants to leave. or you're not able to stay, we appreciate all of you staying and participating in the workshop. But very quickly, let me close this out. That's not what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to do. I'm just gonna summarize again. Thank you all for coming. If you didn't hear me at the beginning, we are a nonprofit organization, and we do generally two things. So we do a lot of events like this one, right? So we do this scholarship workshop every year because Brian, Vicky, and Tanya are such a hoot, and everybody loves them. We do a lot of other events and workshops like this. We recently did a leadership workshop. We do presentation skill ones. So throughout the year, we do a lot of this stuff. So if you're interested in it, I would suggest checking out the website and following that, and or watching on Facebook or on Instagram, where we update these types of events most of the time. We're also open to a lot of your suggestions. So if you have events that you want to see, let us know, like in the chat or like on Instagram DM or whatever is convenient for you. We're open to that. The other thing that we do, and Brian had kind of alluded to this earlier, is that we offer one-on-one mentorship for students with mentors like Vicky, Brian, and Tanya. What that is kind of like a coaching almost, if you don't know what mentorship is. So they help you with a specific goal that you have in mind, or even if you don't have a specific goal, maybe your goal is, I want to figure out what to do after college, after school, after high school, or I specifically want to go to Australia to study, right? If you have something like that and you're interested in getting like help from somebody who's been there, done that, knows what it's about, we also do that. So if you're interested in that, go to the website and submit an application. It's pretty easy. I don't know if we need to dive too much into that anymore, but like I said, everything that you probably want to know on the website, on Instagram. And then just before we jump back into the questions, which I still see some good questions coming in, if you guys wouldn't mind sharing feedback on what you thought about like the event, it's going to help next year's event improve as well. And I'm sure Vicky, Brian, and Tanya will appreciate any feedback that you want to give, good, bad, constructive. It's going to be helpful in the long run. So I'm going to leave this on the screen, and then we can kind of continue answering questions. So you can either scan the QR code or essentially go to that short link, and that should get you to a short survey. Should take you like 3 minutes, if anything. In the meantime, let us jump back to where we left off in terms of questions. Cool. So we had one question from Anushri, and the question was, do all scholarships require SPM results?
I can start with that. So not necessarily. It depends on your highest qualification. Like for instance, if you do have a diploma results, and then you would like to apply for degree using that results, it's possible as well. Like in fact, just based on my experience, so I did my diploma degree, I have my CGPA. In fact, those are the results that got me into ANU, and I actually got offered as well a scholarship from ANU universities itself to waive off my tuition fee, but I decided to go with another scholarship. So that's just an example. Like you normally use your highest results to apply for whatever scholarships that is available. So it's not necessarily SPM results that is required, but it really depends on what level you are. If SPM result is your highest level of education, that is likely the one that you will be using a lot right after SPM. But yeah, again, not necessary. It can be like A-level results. It probably can be your diploma result. It can be any other results as well.
Yeah, I agree with Vicky. I think she covered most of it. But of course, scholarships by Malaysia usually requires your SPM results. Yeah.
True. Okay. Another question from Anushri. Can I know why certain scholarships require siblings detail like salary slips and annual income?
You guys want to cover, or I go again?
I don't know about sibling, but I know about parents' income. Yeah, like for example, JPA, I mean, one of the criteria or one of the quota they would give is for someone with lower income. So they wanted to know about your family background, things like that. Yeah.
I guess it depends on what scholarships you're going for. The term for those that especially look at sleeps, they kind of commonly use is bursary award or bursary scholarship. Those scholarships are emphasized on lower income people, or lower income families. So if they're looking for your immediate family's details, they can even ask for salary slips, ask for utility bills like your electricity bills, your water bills, all that kind of details to roughly gauge what kind of environment you're in, and that is the emphasis of the scholarship. Rather than the emphasis of your results or your curricular activities. So that's the main reason. But if otherwise they probably, if you are not sure and you probably you don't want to disclose too much of information, the other way we would encourage you is to engage and contact the organizer and ask question about why are these going to be given to you guys and what you're going to do with it. That's probably another way if you think it's too personal to release.
Okay. I'll move on to the next question from Li Xuan. Hi, Li Xuan. Are all the scholarships, all the scholarships include living costs, and is the living cost included in scholarship enough for us?
Okay, so we kind of touched this a little bit already just now, like the details of living costs. And from the perspective I talked about from what are the breakdowns of things they give you, but not all scholarships is enough for you, depending on the areas you are in. So for instance, if they give you X amount, let's say 1,000 ringgit per month to Australia, it doesn't mean that 1,000 ringgit is enough for you in Canberra or in Sydney. It may be enough for you in other parts of Australia, but not necessarily enough for you in Sydney, for instance. So they give you, it's a kind of a fixed amount based on the country, but within the country itself, when you break down to different areas like different states and different districts and all that, the living cost is different. So you will need to know, as I mentioned earlier, way earlier, to know how much you need to spend. Then that's where you target what scholarships you're looking for. So if the area that you're going to go, say Australia's living cost in annual living cost is, you can get this information online and check with the immigration as well. They recommended you about like $18,000 per year. And then you can correlate it with the amount of scholarship you get. Is it enough? And some scholars, they definitely have to work as well to get extra or palm in a little bit of money from their parents. But not, the answer is no. Not all scholarships will be enough for you depending on the areas that you're going to be.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. For example, I mean, I'm just giving example from the JPA scholarship. They do give different allowance depending on whether your university is in the urban area or suburban area. But of course, I mean, when you're overseas, there will be times where you want to go travel, you want extra money for pleasure and things like that. So definitely you have to work to get that extra, allowances. Yeah. So living cost probably like the bare minimum that can get you through, but the extras you gotta work for it.
Yeah, I'll speak from experience. I have like been in scholarship with another person exactly the same amount, but the other person did not have enough to live, but I do more than enough. In fact, I could save. So it really depends on how you live as well. That's one thing. And of course, that would not cover your vacation fee, for instance, this kind of thing, but it do covers your basic living expenses normally. And the good news is also scholarships that provide or cover living expenses, they always moderate it as well. So take for instance for JPA, I know that on certain years they would sort of understand, is that amount enough in a different urban area, in the different areas that you are living, and they do a survey, and that amount goes up. And similarly, like PhD scholarships at universities like in Australia, the amount of scholarship provided to you, it's really on a basis that you need to cover for your living expenses as well. So that means that a PhD scholarship that covers your living expenses 2 years ago may be slightly lesser than now. And that's the reason why, because they know that the living expenses has increased and they will increase proportionately to help you to cover as much as they could. But obviously, it really depends on how you live by means of the amount and also like where you live as well.
I just want to add one more thing regarding about living costs. Knowing how they distribute the amount of money to you and when they're going to distribute the money to you is very, very important. Because in like my experience is that if based on Sime Nabi, they break it down to 6 months and 6 months. So you kind of get the first 6 months and then they give you another following 6 months. That's a lot of money. And then when you get the money, you're thinking like you're like freaking rich and you start spending money. So you don't have, so that's very important. But knowing when they release the next amount of money is super important because you may budget it like say very simple maths, right? You go say like 18,000 and divide by 6. Then you say, oh, each month I have 3,000. Is my maths correct? Okay, yeah. So say 3,000. So then if you do that, then I say, okay, each month I just buy 3,000. Then the next time we're gonna release is say 6 months later, but it's not necessarily true. So you gotta make sure that you don't budget exactly 3,000 per month because in my experience, my payout was delayed by 2 months. So that would mean that you got to make sure you have sufficient, in my experience, at least 2 months extra. So you don't try to spend it all. At the end of the day, you got to eat porridge every day, or probably no porridge on the table. So that what happens if you have to eat porridge for a couple of weeks to make sure I have enough until the next amount of money is released. That is super important.
I have to agree, Brian. That is a very good point because that was what happened to me, and not for the 6 months, but because when you say you get your scholarship, right, then you expect, oh, the money is going to come in before you go and start studying. No, you need to have extra at least for 1 or 2 months before you leave the country, and really bring enough because it's very troublesome sometimes to try to wire transfer money, and if you don't even have money to get a cell phone or a phone plan, you're really in trouble, seriously. And I got into trouble for that. Yeah, so yeah, that that is very important.
I like the porridge note. It's all right. We understand. We've all been there. It's good. All right. Thanks, Lee Xuan. Good question. Farisha asked, what is the highest CGPA requirement for scholarships?
Yes. Isn't the best would be the best? What is the highest CGPA?
mean the
Is it the
minimum?
minimum?
The lowest? Or
The
like
lowest that you need to achieve.
what
is it?
would I mean the highest depend on the school and the country, I suppose. On the
Yeah.
format.
Well, that's minimum, right? But the highest is depend on your competition. So
Yep.
so if they set a minimum, say you gotta be say out of 4, you have 3 out of 4 CGPA, and that's the minimum. And you go in that they say they offer 2 scholarships, and you don't have competition, and you're the only one there. For sure you get because you're the highest, right? So it really depends on your competition. Then when I say you're going to Sime Nabi, you're looking at 2,000 applicants. And then among that 1,999, what's the highest among them? It's very hard to gauge, but this give you a perspective of the level of competition we are in. Is that when I go into scholarship for an interview, my CGPA at that time was 3.95 out of 4. But my competition is most of them 4 out of 4. But we are talking about the scholarships that focus on your results and also your non-academic stuff like curricular and all kind of stuff that we talked about, all the rounder stuff, right?
Yes.
But you gotta know that your competition is gonna be very competitive in that sense. But also note that there are also non-academic settings which we kind of talked about it as well.
Yeah, I think it's really depending on your competitors and also like the types of scholarship you applied for. So if you are applying for a very stiff competition of like a scholarship, like for instance, Samdabi, JPA, sometimes like I think my personal opinion is the minimum you should be out of four. Normally is 3.9. That is like minimum because you will have a lot of competitors who are like four. So you want to place yourself to be considered as a, a, a competitor among the other applicants. But at the same time, that means that you need to work a bit harder to shine through other aspects. Whereas a person who got like higher, I guess, academic achievement and they portrayed themselves very well, they have higher chances. So yeah, it really depends on the competition in that particular scholarship and what type of scholarship you're applying for. It not necessarily like you have to get the most highest CGPA. There are scholarships that are provided to assist certain like I guess background in a family, for instance, like low income. So these are very different. They don't really emphasize on the CGPA. They put a lot of emphasis on probably your family income, for instance. So it really depends on the criteria.
Yeah. Alrighty, let's move on to the next question, which is, would being able to speak in multiple languages help in applying for a scholarship? Haha, I know the answer
Yes.
to this one. Yes.
For JPA, you need to interview in both languages.
Oh,
Yeah, English and Bahasa. So you have to introduce yourself and also, I guess, answer questions or do the whatever task in both Bahasa and English. Good luck if your Bahasa is not so good. I mean, for JPA scholarships, yeah. Not sure about the others, but yeah, other scholarships like the one in Taiwan, they don't require, but they get very impressed when you can speak very good Chinese,
yes.
Mandarin.
So the answer is
so
it depends, right, on the scholarship.
Yeah, depends on the scholarship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like if you were able to speak multiple languages, a skill as well, right? They will see it as a skill. Like, ooh, you know multiple languages, and that's helpful. So it's always like a plus point, but it's not necessarily the case. There are quite a lot of scholarships that probably put more importance in if you know the medium of learning language, that's fine. They don't really care about whether you know some other languages unless that particular scholarship do emphasize like you need to speak some other languages. So I think that for that kind of situation, then you must fulfill those criteria and making sure that you speak multiple languages, and that makes you stand out, like you do have the language ability.
Yeah, especially if you're applying for a scholarship in a country, like for example, if you want to go to Mexico or you want to go
Japan,
Korea or you want to go Japan,
Russia.
which I looked into, you have to be able to speak the language because they're going to interview you in Japanese, in Korean. Potentially you don't have to, but it's a possibility and it will look nicer. Next question is from Hazrina. Are there any scholarships provided for a diploma holder to continue studying abroad for the undergraduate degree, and what are the requirements for those? Oof. Big question.
Brian, you want to start first? I think both of us are doing diploma, so
Yeah,
we're at the position.
So we
Go
can
ahead, Daniel.
already one good examples like we use diploma to apply to go overseas to complete our degree. So yes, definitely. Then you gotta look for it. So JPA was one of it for Wiki, and SIMW was one of it for me. And within at that time, I applied to I think Shell company. You have Maxis as well, and I know I've applied for, I can't remember off my head now, but Shell, Maxis, and SIMW was the three processes that I've been through and got shortlisted and went through the interview. So yes, they do offer. And the requirement back then and today, I think it probably not so much of a different in terms of like what you need in terms of academia and that kind of stuff. But what I probably want to highlight is that as much as requirements is needed, in fulfilling all that minimum details and all that kind of thing, and really need to emphasize your competitors is definitely way higher than the requirements. So you gotta you got to make sure how you put in your applications to make it look you are beyond the requirements that they have set out. So if they say your CGPA is 3, then try to have a proof that you can have more than 3, for example. Although your competitors you may not know how your competitors are, but having said that, if you have only 3 and then the requirement is 3, it doesn't mean you don't apply. You also go and apply. But what I'm trying to say is that you're looking at probability of success. So if you are meeting just within a requirement, you're throwing all your eggs in one basket and then you're just giving a hope on that, then it's a dangerous thing to do. You got to make sure that's a requirement, then you gauge roughly where's your stand. And knowing, you look out for forums, you also will know approximately, or even newspapers and stuff like that, that will give you an idea of how many people will apply for that scholarship. So like Sanabi, I will give you an idea, it's 2,000 people. So that's an idea to know where you're standing in terms of the requirements.
Just one other thing that I think Brian has really covered all the things. One thing that I would like to add on is like, just be mindful that when you do diploma, particularly in private universities, making sure that they are recognized, because right, ultimately you'll be using that result to be applying for the next stage to study abroad. If those countries are not recognizing your degree as in the diploma degree, I don't think they even will consider, take for instance. So that's a minor thing. So make sure that when you did a diploma course, particularly in private, institution, make sure they are recognized and they are recognized globally to open up doors. Yeah. So I think that's important because ultimately it's the recognition, right? Especially like reputation as well. So scholarships, like normally they will take into consideration where you apply to, like as Brian has mentioned, Ivy League universities will give you a boost. They know that you got accepted to a universities that are very reputable. Likewise, in order for you to get a diploma, to use the diploma results to be accredited or in terms of being assessed, make sure that they are also from at least recognized. And if they are reputable, they are even better. Yep.
So one more thing to add on top of that, I just thought about it. So if knowing your scholarship timeline and when you want to apply scholarship is one thing to look at, and knowing how you want to apply your course, which is your degree, is a separate thing. This is very important because when you look at the timeline of your scholarship, start when they open and when they give you the result and when they give you the money, and it's a separate entire thing that when you actually apply for your application to get the offer of the degree is a separate process, because if you are doing it separately, you got to make sure the overlapping of the timeline matches and makes sense. So I give you an instance, I have one person, they apply the course here and then they apply the scholarship, another separate process, but you have to start your degree say today, but your scholarship offer will only give you the result, whether you get or you don't get, like 6 months later. So it doesn't make sense. You have to start your degree today, but you only know your scholarship 6 months later. So does it mean that you're gonna pay from now to the 6 months later all everything for your money, and do you have the money or not? So these are the things you really need to be aware of in terms of the overlapping of the timeline, and it has to make sure it aligns with your goal.
Cool. We have, I would say we'll try to wrap things up because we're already a half hour over. But once again, I want to post a link for feedback in the chat, everybody. If you wouldn't mind filling it, I didn't see a lot come in earlier, but I just want to remind you guys that this really helps us improve the event. And also, if you wanted a touch point with us to learn more about the mentorship or learn more about future events, this feedback form will give you an opportunity to do it. So I'll just post it in the chat one more time, and then we'll move on to, I think, what looks like the last two questions. So Anushree asks, do I need to submit a high school or diploma curriculum certificates or both upon applying for any scholarships after my diploma studies?
I think it really depends on what is required, but just safely assume they want both. so that you're not like, you know, neglecting or overlooking one of the requirements. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
it's important to present your most recent results. Like, what's the point of just submitting your high school and not your diploma, but you are doing your diploma studies? It doesn't make sense, right? So
Mm.
it gives a bit of a false interpretation, like why are you hiding your diploma results? Or
Yeah.
likewise, like in a way, it gives that kind of vibe. And likewise, if normally, depending on the scholarship, if it's local, SPM is necessary. It's almost
Correct.
like must.
Yeah.
Diploma is like to add on to that, like I would say, and it's best to present your most latest result as well because that really shows where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because things change.
I guess his submission, the perspective submission is, do you submit from a perspective of CV or you submit from a perspective of transcript? So in general, when the application asks you to submit the transcripts, they will usually mention it. You gotta put in your diploma transcripts, you gotta put in your SPN transcripts and all that
Yep.
stuff. But
Yep.
in your CV, just put it in because they're gonna read it anyway. So just put it in, and if they want to clarify or verify about their entire thing, they will definitely mention that, put in the transcripts.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Alrighty.
also, sorry, just to add on,
Go ahead,
because
Tanya.
some scholarships they even ask you for your UPSR results or PMR. I mean, now you don't have PMR or UPSR for this year, but then some they want those. I'm serious, so I have to
Mm.
dig out all those like old results. Yeah, so do keep them. Don't lose them. You never know.
All right. Don't burn your results, guys. Don't do that. All right, moving on. Next question, my Legion. Will a medical scholar is a medical scholarship hard to get compared with other types of scholarships? Oh, it's very specific. Can anyone answer this? I said
Yeah,
Brian.
I can.
All right.
yeah.
Apparently, it's not specific. Go ahead.
I'll start it on that just because of my elder sister's experience. She's in medical. She got a
Mhm.
scholarship. I can tell you up front, yes, very competitive. If you want to get a medical scholarship, yes. If you pay upfront for your studies, that's okay. But if you want a scholarship in medical, because medical is just a line that all the fourth letters, those that scores really well would go for. It's very typical Malaysia. So we just have to acknowledge that. So yes, it is very, very hard. If you are aiming towards this, look at your options.
Yeah.
So like JPA scholarships and so forth, they are very, very, very competitive. Look into options like could you possibly get some sort of university support or some sort of tuition fee waiving from private organizations that offer medical studies. That's also another option. But bottom line is they are comparatively very hard to get. And I think the second harder one is also the second top like area that people normally go for, engineering. It's also
Yep.
quite a stiff competition, I would say. This two is always on the top. And yeah, it's very, very hard to secure a full scholarship in those areas. And you really, really need to stand out just because of the number of competition, to be honest, more than anything. It's not that you're not qualified. I know there are people that like didn't get a full flight, but they go for it because they really passionate about medical. They pursue it in one way or the other. Take for example, they actually pursue their studies in Indonesia, and it's recognized. They came back, and it's cheaper because it's cheaper. So it doesn't mean that when you don't score well, you shouldn't be in medical line. It's just a scholarship that is a little bit competitive compared to other fields.
Yep. Brian, you were
Um,
going to say something?
yeah, the short answer is yes, unfortunately. But you gotta know the medical. If you say medical, you gotta break down what sorts of medical here. So because they differs, but in general, yes, it's difficult because medical. If you're looking at doing doctor as a GP or specialist in future, then it's probably one of the toughest in the medical sector. And in that perspective, if I would like to highlight is that knowing that you gotta know your process of how you're gonna achieve to that. So commonly people do pre-U and then they go and do MBBS, which is Bachelor's of medicine and Bachelor of Surgery. That's the common route. So to secure you a pre-U, maybe that's easier. Pre-U could be like A levels or things like that. But to do that degree itself, which is MBBS, then it's definitely harder. And one thing you need to know is because medical degrees is one of the most expensive degrees in the entire world. So to give you a perspective is that you're looking at, just in Australia, I know of alone, is approximately $70,000 per year. So that is just the degree alone. And then on top of that, your living expenses could be approximately 30,000 or 30,000 if you want. So looking at $100,000 a year to help you sustain that. And medical degree is approximately about 4 years or more, and depending on the program. So you're looking at approximately $400,000 of a package to secure you a degree, excluding your pre-U. So we haven't really talked about the pre-U itself. So that is why it's very expensive. But what you need to know is that there's also another thing called Doctor of Medicine, because in Australia, separately from US, they combine MBBS and Doctor of Medicine, in short, they call MD, into one package of a program, which is called a dual degree. Means you get an MBBS and you get an MD. So that is a 6 years program. So you just multiply the ratio out, and that's the amount you need to get. That is why it's super duper expensive. And common processes, and I think in Malaysia, as far as I know, is JPA is a common one, but JPA kind of, you have to put up what you want and not necessarily get it. But having said that, is because usually all sorts of professionals that you're going to take is going to link up with an organization. And when looking at medicals are often handled by the government themselves, and that is, you're looking at public medicine, public medical staff, which all general hospital. You will quite hard to get private sectors from a medical point of view to support that, but you might want to look at that. If there's one option, say, for example, there is a Sunway. I keep talking about Sunway. It's a Sunway hospital, for example. So you might want to look at that. Maybe there's an option, which I don't know. So because when you target your professional, try to list down all the big corporations, when especially the professional degree is very expensive. Target all the big corps and kind of determine these are the private corporations, are they actually offering or not. So that is one thing you gotta look at. Another medical is like pharmacy. That's another point. But nurse, if you want to do any nursing program, then it's a bit easier, because I do know that Science again, that they have offered a special nursing program specifically for that. But it could be for other companies you got to look out for, or physiotherapy is another option. But these are the things that you probably have to know. The takeaway here is that any professionals that you want to do, link up to the corporations that you're going to look for. Public corporations with the government, JPA, already know. Then search for all the private companies and look out whether you can get it. But knowing that how much you need, and another option is that, which I can think of now off my head, is that partial scholarship is going to be there for sure. So partial scholarship for medical degree, the universities themselves may offer, but partial degree, we are talking about out of 70,000, maybe they only give you 10 to 20,000. So you still have to fork out 50,000. But there's one option you have to look at, partial scholarships, to just subsidizing the amount that you need to spend.
All right. Looks like we have one more question from Starry. If I'm applying for a master or PhD scholarship, is my secondary school achievement still applicable?
Short answer, if not quite. It's always your most recent, and PhD, normally they look into your degree. That is, they look into your most recent degree and your academic achievement for that. So, and it also depends on where you're applying it is. So if you are in an overseas context, it's totally irrelevant, because SPM is not something they know. What is it? Like, it doesn't mean anything. So take, for instance, my application to ANU PhD scholarship is completely my bachelor honors degree results. Yeah, that is the most important one. But if you have your diploma, if you want to include it, it's like a supporting document, I would say, almost, but it's not like crucial.
Yeah, I mean, unless during your bachelor's degree time period you really didn't do anything, you don't have any achievements. I mean, which I doubt so, right? So because all of you are I'm sure you will achieve something in your course of degree of 4 years. So yeah, but still keep your whatever achievements, like just keep it, don't throw it away. You may need it someday. I don't know.
Yeah, just to let you know, I still
Oh,
keep my kindergarten achievements, by the way. So
Oh
that's
my
not,
god.
just the thing. But the point here is that if someone is trying to assess your application, they look for what stands out most recently. Anything, even if you apply for a visa, you look at where you traveled most recently, right? So
Mm-mm.
your most recent could be 10 years ago, and before, like what Tanya said, within 10 years, you never do anything. So your most recent is 10 years ago. So you just put it up, that's your most recent, right? So when you look at that, you also need to bear in mind that most applications now, I would assume, is all digital. Those days I have to do all the posting, which is all the old school stuff.
Yep.
But it's all the digital stuff now. They have a limit in terms of the size of the files,
Number.
yeah, and a number of the files. So that will definitely limit you to put things that you can put. So if they're gonna put like, oh, you can put as big as you want, then put everything in, but prioritize which level you want to go up first. But if they think that if you see that it's only a couple of KBs, then you have to really look at what stands out the most and just put it all up because that's what you have. Then go for it. So yeah.
Yeah. And when Brian said put everything in, he means everything from high school, not kindergarten. So just
Yeah,
to clarify,
okay. Kindergarten means you keep it so that when you in future you can refer and show your chuchu and your chichi and
it's to
all.
yeah,
show
that
to
is for
his
personal
children actually is what
achievement,
he
you
wants.
know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's personal
Really more
achievement.
about personal achievement. Have a bit of a, personal booklet that you can, after when you're at 40 years old and then you look back and then you laugh about it, for instance. It's just
Yeah, yeah.
good to keep everything.
All right. Good questions, guys. Really good questions. So it looks like that was the end of our questions. If anybody has any last minute questions, feel free to throw them on. Otherwise, I think we can start wrapping up. We are 42 minutes in, but everyone who is still in chat and who was here earlier, thank you all. I hope you guys learned something. I definitely learn something every year when I listen to these guys talk. And Brian, Tanya, Vicky, thank you guys so much for your time. Is there any last minute closing thoughts, words, comments you want to share with the chat before we close up?
I can go first. So really, be prepared, take the opportunity, and then, yeah, don't. I think Brian will say this, but don't throw all your eggs in one basket. Really, really, yeah.
I'll add on to that. Like, I got inspired by some of the other approaches when I was applying for scholarship. So it doesn't necessarily means that you should just go through the channel that is available. Like, for instance, like Google and stuff. Sometimes put the initiative to reach out. I have shared this experience last year. I said like there's one person that I know previously actually sent like hundreds of letters to a lot of companies in his area to get a scholarship to study overseas. He got one through that method. So you never know what approaches. I'm not saying that you should send 100 letters, but I'm saying that there's so many different approaches. It doesn't put some initiative sometimes, not just what you see. Sometimes go forward, put yourself out there, and always hope for the best. Yeah, and good luck with your scholarship application.
Yeah, I think we have questions about. I'll just say whatever we have said, right? But the main thing is the legal perspective is super important, which often people missed out. I'm saying from my experience again. So very important, as I said just now, final degree, final destination is super important to determine your plan. So you really want to nail that down. So when I said I wanted to do my PhD, that was 2012, right? And we don't offer a scholarship, but the implication of the legal has caused me to delay all these processes, and I'm now doing my PhD. That's like 7 years later. So that implication is going to affect your career, and how you're going to affect it's a long term. It's not too easy as you said. I apply, get it, and go for it, because you must foresee yourself 5 years, 10 years from now, and how does it actually link all up together.
Yep. All right. Well, we got one more question. Tanya, I know if you have to run, Tanya, don't feel obliged to
Yeah,
stay.
so sorry, I have to go, guys. But to all of you who are still there, yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. And also, yeah, good luck for your SPM or whatever exams that you're going through. It's a tough time, but really good luck. And if you have any questions, just send us a message. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Bye.
Bye.
All right, we'll take last question. Do you guys think it's necessary to get a postgraduate degree? Ooh, this can spark a debate. Who wants to take what side?
I can start off based on my experience. So I did not plan to do a postgraduate. Let's put it that way. Well, I thought that I'm going to finish my degree and I'm going to find a job. I'm going to be working. That's my plan initially. It changed my mind when I got offered one. And the reason I got offered in the area of PhD scholarship that I will be working in is something I'm really passionate of. It's something that I got into in the last years during my honors project. So it was because of my passion that I pursued my postgraduate, because I really liked learning the stuff in that area, like sustainability. I'm in sustainability. I'm also a trained engineer as well. So I incorporate these expertise into what I'm doing even today. And I'm really happy with what I did. In fact, I started off as an electronic engineering. I studied the same time as Brian. We both are in electronic engineering, and I did stir to another area. So it's not necessary to get a postgraduate degree, I would say. It really depends on your personal, where you see yourself in future. If you see yourself like you want to learn about this and contribute from a research perspective or contributing to industry perspective, depending on what kind of PhD you're doing, then that is fulfilling what you are passionate about. But if that is not something you are thinking of, in fact, you are thinking of like, I want to, be in industry, work in industry, really help companies like build up certain area of expertise. It's not necessary. So in fact, like take for instance in Australia, your experience count much more. Like your experience in that area actually puts you at a better position in your career. But in a research part that I did, I am quite lucky that in my research area, I was bridging the gap between industry and translating it from academic to research to industry perspective. And it was a smooth transition for me to industry, but it may not be the case for a lot of people. So don't think that you have PhD, that means like you're going to get good jobs and you definitely be, lead in a management position. No, that's not the case. You are starting from the bottom as well because you are lacking of the industry experience. That would be something I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, at the end, it's dependent on what you want to be. If you're going to be a specialist, the answer is yes, you got no choice. It's a requirement, in fact. But if you want to be medical scientist, the answer is also yes, you need. So give you a perspective is I'm working with a professor. So if you want to be a professor, that's another whole different game, right? So for your perspective is that I'm working with this professor. He has completed first his Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, and then he went on to complete Bachelor's of Physiology, and then he went on to complete Doctor of Medicine, and then he went and do PhD of Human Movement Control and Proprioception, and then he went and do Doctor of Science. So when I mention all these, it sounds like them a lot, but it is a lot. Now he's like, what, 60 plus years old and still in the area, but his title is medical scientist. So if you want to be medical scientist or scientist as a whole, then it's going to add up in your stuff. But if like, say you want to do, especially nowadays, people are talking a lot about big data, blah, 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 kind of digitech related stuff with deep learning and machine learning. Then it's another whole different game of debate. But I do know that some famous guys, they only have degree, or at least a master's. So when you say postgraduate, it's master's and so on. So master's and another, you can even think about advanced degree or advanced diploma. And there's a lot of different packages now in postgraduate. So the postgraduate itself is so many that you really need to look at from that perspective. So at the end, my answer would be they will depend on the career that you're taking. If you're gonna take a certain very professional base, then yes, you need. If you're taking non requirement based, then you don't really need to. Or if you want to cross. So my instance is I did bachelor's of engineering and I'm now doing PhD in pathology. So I'm crossing medicine and engineering together.
I do have to highlight that it is also country based. I have friends from China that told me that if they don't get at least master, they don't get a job. But that is in China
In
context.
China,
It's
yeah.
not. Yeah.
It depends
So
on the
I
place.
emphasize that. Exactly. So this is in China situation. So I would say in that context, it's definitely necessary to get you to the market. But in Malaysia, it's fine. So don't worry about it. And another thing that I would like to emphasize is like postgraduate, like master's or PhD, only do it when you're really passionate about it. Don't
Yes.
start the journey if you are
Not
not
ready.
sure.
Mm.
It's a very tough journey. It is a tough journey. I've gone through, and Brian is doing now, so you can ask all about it from him. It's a roller coaster journey that sometimes you feel like you are alone in it. Like it does felt that way. So you really have to have a very tough mindset to complete a PhD. To be honest, you are really sometimes by your own. You do get assistance, but it's really about your research and you are the expert in it. And normally you drive your project. So you're the project manager, budget, everything. You're doing everything for yourself to drive the project to the finish line. So it's not an easy task, but if you are motivated and very passionate about an issue or a research that you are trying to do for your postgraduate, that would be great. You will be an excellent candidate. But if you're not sure, I would suggest not to, because it can be quite mentally draining for some people where they
For
dropped out from PhD.
for engineering specifically, um, depend on the course you're going to take, because if you want to be recognized by the Board of Engineers and the Institution of Engineers Malaysia, you need to have a 4 years value of a degree. And often if you do in UK or UK based degree, it's usually just 3 years value. So the question is, do you want to get professional recognition by the board in Malaysia or in other country? So if you get recognized in Malaysia, then it's easier for you to, if you go to overseas, say like in Australia, you could transfer. So my situation, my Malaysia's experience, I got myself chartered there, and then I come here. It was easy. I just transferred. And from the industrial point of view, having chartered, you get extra in terms of your salary, and it's like a professional recognition. So if you're doing Australia-based degree, it's a 4 years value on its own, then it's already recognized, then you don't really need a postgraduate. So engineering, very specific. If you want to know more in terms of the career, you can just BMS the details as well.
Yeah. I will answer your question, Jay, but like I will say the same thing. You ask yourself what you want out of the things you do. And so in the very same case of doing a master's or a PhD, you ask yourself what you want out of it. Is it experience? Is it more in-depth knowledge? Is it bringing you a step to where you want to go? I think that's what you ask yourself. Yeah, that was the last question, I think. Guys, thanks so much for your time. Everyone else who is still here, thanks for listening. We hope to see you guys at the next event, which we will be announcing pretty soon. Very exciting. If you guys didn't know, we'll just give you a sneak peek. But we'll be doing almost like a university major / career fair, which will be very interesting. And you might see some familiar faces there again. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to bring us back to the closing screen, but have a good rest of your, it's now afternoon. So yeah, see you all. Thank you.
See you guys.
Take care. Bye, everyone.